Okay, great, thanks. Well, we have Kevin MacKinen here, who now you have you use the we've had some technical difficulties, so hope the audience will bear with us a bit. We've had some technical difficulties, so we're doing this with audio. And I'm interviewing Kevin MacKinen, who's worked for like 29 years, I believe, helping with an advocate for low income people. And you've been in New York City for 25 years, helping homeless and low income people. And now you're working with people with COVID.
Yeah,
Okay.
a couple of capacities. I was officially a patient transporter. This is how I got on the list to get vaccinated really early. But also I worked, done some work with a legal organization that's helping with some of the effects of COVID.
Okay.
Because, as you know, the New York City was really late in the game and getting its, shelter in place and lockdown and stuff like that. So what happened was, of course, we had 2 months of this COVID running rampant where they weren't even testing people. They weren't even, there were 5 of us had gone down to get to a city MD, and they wouldn't test any of us, and we all ended up having it.
Right. Ooh. So.
And then,
Well. So you had COVID, you said?
oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
I had it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know
And
that.
we went down, and the city MD didn't have any tests left for us. So if we had gone home and died, we would not have encountered as COVID cases or COVID deaths. So
Right.
anyway, eventually we got tested, and actually we all got better, and
Okay,
we
that's
all
good.
got tested and tested positive. And then I got a negative test. And then when the vaccine started coming out, we had contacts at one of the local hospitals, and they got us on a list. So about 40 of us got vaccinations as being what's the term, essential workers. Anyway, none of us are paid. We're all volunteers.
Right.
But so what happens, of course, is nobody's got any income, so nobody's paying rent.
Right.
And of course, landlords aren't getting rent income. And they had this feel-good story a friend of mine from Arizona sent about this Queens landlord who let everyone have April, this is 2020, everyone have April rent free. But you never heard anything after that.
Right.
And what happened was the New York City courts shut down, and there were already, I would say, I think it's like 100,000 eviction cases pending.
Okay.
And now there's over 200,000.
Whoa. Now, was there an eviction moratorium at one point for a time?
There actually still is.
Okay.
In fact, they are not seeing any cases for non-payment of rent. None of those housing cases are going to be on the calendar.
Okay.
Only for either what's called a holdover or possessory judgment. And those are judgments that don't involve money. It involves, like, if you have a nuisance tenant or something, or like my colleague of mine runs these buildings I live in, and next door we have basically a police agent who's been squatting there for about a year.
Police agent. Okay.
And he'll be there forever because, yes, well, we know because he has a really long arrest record, but he's always out front talking to the police.
Yeah.
And of course, we're in a line of work that gets a lot of police attention. So I have no doubt this guy is never ever going to lose his apartment, whether he could pay or not.
Yeah.
Anyway. So
I know
anyway,
so
but so what happens, of course, is you have sort of a double-edged sword. You have, and part of it is the big real estate people, they're going to wait it out, and they're going to wait till everything, and they're going to wait till they can just get rid of the tenants. And the smaller landlords, of course, the people who by choice or by necessity ended up taking tenants, those are the people that are really kind of getting screwed too. Nobody's getting screwed worse than the tenants, though. I don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for the landlords. I'm just explaining the objective situation.
Right.
So there's now in the Bronx over 73,000 evictions. The Bronx only has about 1/6 of New York City's population. It has over 1/3 of its pending eviction cases.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's going to be a real storm when that hits. So,
Yeah.
So volunteer attorneys have been giving advice, and some have agreed to take on cases pro bono, like not necessarily a lot of time-consuming things, but actually to do legal footwork, which is really helpful. And of course,
Okay.
to give advice, because only attorneys can give advice.
Right.
So all we do is we act on their advice,
Okay. Right.
and we have advocates. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what's been going on with the legal aspect. Of the medical aspect of COVID, of course, is that a lot of the non-COVID medical things were put by the wayside. So anyway, so a lot of people are catching up with that. And also we're still advocating for people to get vaccinated, because it's now there's, I don't know who's reporting this, but what I heard was there's 250 COVID deaths a day going on in the United States.
Still, yeah.
And 98% of those are people who have not been vaccinated.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right.
So yeah, get vaccinated.
Right. Okay. Right.
Well, I had it and got vaccinated, so I figure I'm doubly good, but I still wear a mask when I go inside anywhere in public. I don't, I wear my little button that says I've been vaccinated, but and I have the card around. Hopefully, I want to get my free Krispy Kreme donut for anyone who gets vaccinated.
Right, the fringe benefit, yeah, fringe benefit, right.
Right, but the real benefit is I actually get to move around a lot. I mean, before, I would say 3 or 4 months of lockdown was really tough when you were organizing.
Yeah, I know.
Most of my work, I'm old school. I do is by phone and in arm's length. So that's a real blow, but I do a lot of phone work. So, and then once I was out of lockdown, it was basically about 10 different families I was running errands for. And that was kind of a full-time job, like even through into the summer. And then we got back with the lockdown, the restrictions eased. And so I got back into my regular stuff, which is mainly giving advice and on the job training and doing education. And then a lot of construction and building renovation, because, that's also something that happens with people when they don't have money, they can't afford to fix things. So
right, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. So did you do most of your work in the Bronx or all boroughs, or
mainly Brooklyn, and some in the Bronx? Yeah, I split. I would say nowadays it's less than 10% of my time in the Bronx now, but before it was quite a bit of time. I spent about 4 months between 2019 and 2020 full-time up in the Bronx on a building renovation project that was this legal organization that's taking on cases for all these evicted or not evicted, let's say the people who are in their homes by virtue of the moratorium on evictions, and that hasn't ended yet, so knock on wood. But in the meantime, people are still they're racking up a debt, and that's the other problem. And we've dealt with this before, because there's also a moratorium on utility shutoffs in New York State. And so if you're not paying your utility bills, they can't shut you off. But as soon as the heating season's over, they can shut you off.
Yeah, right.
And that means you start the heating season with no heat.
Yeah, that's not good. That's horrible.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they literally have to choose between rent and heat. And sadly, a lot of people, choose to pay the heat before they'll pay for food, because, it's a grim truth that it takes longer to starve than it does to freeze to death. I mean, that is literally the life and death choices a lot of people are making out there, which is why I kept doing this. It was getting worse, like systemically worse, but our reach was getting better. There was, I worked in organizations in California, Philadelphia, here, all dealing with, they're like what you'd call like mutual aid type programs, but also policy, like political groups. They would fight, like why are utility rates so high? Why is rent so high? Why are wages so low? And you get together people and, and actually fight for systemic things. And I think, I don't know the exact figures, but in one of our arenas alone, I think Philly alone, we've saved over, I would say in the course of 10 years, about $240 million in utility rate increases we've stopped.
Okay.
And it's now to a point where one of the guys who used to be he was a consumer advocate for the Philadelphia Gas Commission.
Okay.
And he told us, you guys literally, the gas company didn't even ask for as high a raise because they knew they wouldn't get it if you showed up.
Right. Whoa.
We were proud of that. Yeah.
That's good. Well, interesting.
Well, you have to do something, right? I mean, it's not the end. The solution is obviously political power, but if you can start to take away where it hurts them the most, which is in their pocketbooks, they'll start to listen. And Philadelphia has a city-owned utility, but their three biggest bondholders are, can you guess? Wells Fargo, Citigroup, and who's I want to say J.P. Morgan.
Okay.
Anyway, and all three of them got bailout money, right, in 2008.
Yeah.
And all three of them have demanded increase in their bond interest payments. So they put pressure on the gas works to raise the rates so they can get their payment, even though the price, because of fracking, the actual cost of gas production went down 11% from like 2008 to 2016, went down. Cost of producing gas went down. The rates went up 43%.
Okay.
So that's not math that anyone learns in school about how economics is supposed to work, but that's how they work.
Right. Obama's friends, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Venezuela did have a program. I don't know if they still had it for heating assistance for low income people in the U.S., like the Northeast U.S. I don't know if they still have it or.
What happened with Citgo was how they were doing it. And Citgo is now run by Esquilitos, which are the equivalent of Gusanos, only they're Venezuelan.
Okay.
And so the United States froze their assets, and so they weren't actually allowed to do that program anymore.
Oh, that's why they ended it. Okay. Whoa.
Oh yeah, and in fact, it was very interesting because Joe Kennedy, you're from New England, you've heard of that, the 1-800 Joe for oil.
Yeah.
And Venezuela was the only company, Citgo was the only company that agreed to supply them with the oil for that program.
Yeah. Oh, that's why they ended it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no real, Citgo is not, anyway, it's been tough because it's one of the results of the sanctions against, Venezuela is that they've been seizing their American holdings, and one of those was Citgo. And also in the Caribbean, there's like over $80 million of Venezuelan petro Carribean money in Haiti that the guy Jovenel Moise tried to he actually hired mercenaries to try to steal. For him, not for Venezuela.
Yeah. What's interesting?
So,
yeah. Okay. Interesting. Did you have any theories as to why he was assassinated? Was the U.S. behind that, or was it some inter gang fight, or what was going on?
I only know what also contact ours Kim Ives, who's the editor of the English version of Haiti Liberté.
Okay.
And I recommend right after the morning, the morning of the assassination, Dan Cohen on Behind the Headlines interviewed Kim Ives.
Okay.
And he's got a very interesting history. His mother, when he was very young, his mother married a Haitian gentleman. Okay. And he was educated about Haiti. He was a Haitian revolutionary, actually. And so it influenced Kim Ives. And so he still edits the paper, and he spent about 50 minutes with Dan Cohen literally the morning of the assassination, and he went through the whole shebang. He went through where Moise came from, the factions, because there's basically two ruling classes in Haiti. There's the land-based wealth, and then there's the compradors.
Okay.
the comprador bourgeoisie. And
Right.
so he represented sort of like this nexus, like he sort of brought them together. And then what happened was, of course, is the money the money he was, paying these guys off with started drying up, I guess. And that's why I guess he tried to steal this money from uh, the Venezuelan assets, the $80 million in petro, because Venezuela and Haiti had a deal for cheap oil, and they only had to pay 60%. The
Uh-huh.
other 40% would go into a fund, I guess, a petro fund, anyway, for social programs and things like that in Haiti. And Moise just took all of it,
Oh,
all of that money,
so,
and not for social programs. And he was
yeah.
giving it away to the compradors and to the land base, giving it all the way to the bourgeoisie. So, but I recommend that. I don't remember the exact date, but if you
Okay.
Google it, it's Dan Cohen, and it's an interview with Kim Ives, and it was
Okay.
like the morning of the assassination. And
Right.
so Kim Ives he's a regular font of data about Haiti,
Interesting.
but it could be the U.S. behind it. It could be anything going on. Apparently, the people that raided the house claim they were DEA.
Yeah. Yeah. People in DAA uniforms and they
Right,
posed
right.
DAA. And one guy had been working for the DAA anyway. But it's
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Wow. That's just pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Clintons have had played a pretty big role in Haiti and not all that good from what I understand.
Oh yeah. No, they went into Haiti to do good for themselves, to do good, and they did very well for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's one story that when they Bill Clinton like restored Aristide back to power, there were these
Oh yeah.
backroom deals going on. Like Haiti had to import rice from Arkansas and their own, rice crop. The
Of
farmers were
course.
wiped out. It's probably the tip of the iceberg too.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. It is. And it was very interesting because and Kim Ives goes through that whole history. And apparently, that because Aristide was the president, and then he was overthrown by this junta that was led by Raul Cedras. And
Okay.
when the first time they tried to restore him, they just hired 100 of these. I guess they were ex Tonton Macoute. They hired 100 people to just set a bunch of fires on the docks,
Yeah.
and the whole U.S. fleet turned away. It wasn't a fleet; it was a task force. So when they brought him back in was that '94, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And when they brought him in, there was all kinds of chaos. And so ABC News, in a unbelievable fit of uncensorship, they show these two Marines on a rooftop, and one guy saying, he says, "We're not allowed to do anything here. We're not even allowed to load our weapons. These people it's chaos over here." And one guy says, "Yeah, I'm thinking of dumping my gear and hiking on over to the Dominican Republic." He said that on air.
Oh, yeah.
We're
Yeah.
talking about going AWOL.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah.
It'd be a very politicizing experience. But yeah, the United States has really had its claws in that country, and I think this would make like the third or fourth invasion of that country since, and because over 100 years ago they invaded, 1915,
Like,
and in
yeah.
1994, and I think I
Right.
don't know, whatever, but yeah.
Right. The Constitution was actually written by Franklin Roosevelt, if I remember, by FDR
That makes sense.
in the 20s as well. Interesting. So yeah, to change subjects slightly, you
Yeah.